Hi, I am Bill Gates, and this is in plain language what keeps me up at night. People see the chaos in Washington and think it is just noise, another crazy news day, another legal drama, another round of shouting on television. For weeks now, I've been talking about what that chaos does to investor confidence, to markets, to regular people trying to build a future. I honestly thought that was the worst of it. I thought if we could just ride out the instability at home, tighten things up, get past the daily drama, we would be all right. I was wrong because there is another dimension to this that is even more dangerous. And it is not mainly about what is happening inside the United States. It is about how the rest of the world is reacting to what is happening inside the United States. More specifically, it is about how our adversaries are reacting to our chaos. I have spent my life thinking about systems, computer systems, business systems, market systems, public health systems, and there's one thing that is always true in every field: systems do not exist in a vacuum. Everything is connected. What happens in Washington does not stay in Washington. It ripples across oceans and networks and supply chains. It affects relationships, alliances, and the global balance of power. That is what worries me. For almost a century, America has been the anchor of the global financial and political system. We have not been perfect, but we have been broadly predictable. When that anchor becomes erratic, when the country at the center of the system starts to look unstable and unpredictable, it does not just create anxiety, it creates a vacuum, a hole in the center of the world order, and nothing in nature or politics hates a vacuum more than power. A vacuum never stays empty for long. Something always rushes in to fill it. That is exactly what we are watching right now while we are busy fighting internal legal wars and cultural wars. While we are distracted by every new post, every court filing, every hearing, our adversaries are not sitting on the couch watching the same show. They are moving, they are planning, they are exploiting. They look at our chaos and they do not see chaos. They see a once in a generation opening, an opening to rewrite the rules, an opening to rearrange the map, an opening to build a new world order that does not revolve around Washington and does not depend on the American dollar. And they are grabbing that opening with both hands. My biggest fear is that most people in this country do not even see it happening. We are inside the storm, but we are not watching the radar. Two countries in particular are leading this push. You already know their names: China and Russia. They're playing a very sophisticated game together. Let me start with China. For decades, China's strategy was simple: become the factory of the world, make our phones, our televisions, our clothes, buy our bonds, build high speed trains, ports, and power plants at home. They focused on getting rich fast and lifting hundreds of millions of their people out of poverty. We went along with it because it gave us cheaper products and higher profits. Our companies got bigger margins, consumers got lower prices, and the world got hooked on this model. But in recent years, especially as our politics have turned more chaotic, China's strategy has changed. They still care about growth, of course, but now they want something bigger. They want to be a central hub, the leader. They are looking at our instability, at the trade fights, at the public fights with our own allies, and at our withdrawals from international agreements. And they are sending a very simple message to the rest of the world: you cannot trust Washington anymore. They are unpredictable, they are unreliable, but you can trust us. They are going to countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and they are not showing up with threats or lectures. They show up with contracts, loans, groundbreaking ceremonies. You need a port, they will build it. You need a power plant, they will finance it. You need a digital network, a data center, a fiber cable, they will lay it. They call it infrastructure development. Win win. It is roads, railways, ports, satellites, 5G towers, cloud services. It is a new Silk Road, both physical and digital. And in every one of these deals, they are offering something that markets crave more than anything else: certainty, stable prices, stable policy, long term contracts. While we are arguing over whether we will honor our own commitments from one administration to the next, China is signing 30-year, 40-year, even 50-year agreements. While we threaten tariffs one week and dangle friendship the next, China quietly says, we will be here. We will not flip on you because of an election. From a business point of view, this is brilliant. They are selling certainty and stability to a world that is tired of watching our drama. They are stepping into the exact role we used to play, the steady partner. Now look at Russia. Russia's game is different. China is building a new system. Russia is trying to break the existing one. If China is the banker and builder, Russia is the chaos engineer. Their strategy is not to replace our system with a clean alternative. Uh, Weaken it, fracture it, and make it unreliable. Their advantage grows every time we fight with ourselves and with our allies. For decades, Russia's main obstacle was a strong, unified West, a tight group of democracies led by a fairly predictable United States, backed by NATO and deep economic ties. So their foreign policy is long focused on finding and widening every crack in that structure. Now they do not have to search for cracks. We are blasting holes in the wall from the inside. When they see American leaders question the value of NATO or publicly insult long term partners, they do not just see political noise. They see something they used to spend huge amounts of money trying to achieve through disinformation and influence operations being handed to them for free. They used to have to work hard to convince Europeans that America was unreliable. Now they just hit play on our own speeches. They thrive on division. They weaponize uncertainty. While China offers stability as an alternative to our chaos, Russia amplifies our chaos so it spills beyond our borders. They use troll farms, hack data, social media, bots, state television, and covert networks, not to sell a positive vision of Russia, but simply to make us hate each other a little more, trust our institutions a little less, and doubt every piece of information we see. Every day that we are consumed by internal feuds is a gift to them because every day we are staring into our own political mirror is a day they can move troops, sign energy deals, push mercenaries into a conflict, or rewrite borders without facing a coherent response. They're getting strategic wins, not by outperforming us economically, but by waiting for us to undercut ourselves. It is a very cheap and very effective strategy. Now, here is where these two strategies meet. China is building, Russia is breaking, one is selling stability, the other is spreading instability. On the surface, they look like opposites. In truth, they are two hands on the same steering wheel turning the world away from us. Their real target is not just our military or our tech sector. Their real target is the core engine behind American power, the United States dollar, and the trust that stands behind it. Everything about the global financial order after the Second World War was built around one basic belief: the dollar is safe. If there is a crisis, hold dollars. If you sign a large long-term contract, write it in dollars. If you are a central bank, keep a big share of your reserves in dollars. That belief has let us borrow at low rates, run big deficits, and still look like the responsible adult in the room. It has let us project power without sending a single ship anywhere. This trust is our most valuable asset. Trust that our institutions are stable. Trust that our laws are predictable. Trust that we do not wake up one morning and decide to throw everything out the window. Trust is worth more in real terms than any stock market index or any number of weapon systems. And now that trust is under coordinated pressure, China is quietly building alternatives. More trade done in their currency instead of ours. More payment systems they control instead of ours. More infrastructure that links countries to Beijing rather than Washington. Russia is attacking the other side of the equation, our image as a safe, stable place. With every headline about dysfunction, every attack on our own institutions, every government crisis, every threat of default, the question in the mind of foreign investors and foreign governments grows louder. Is it still safe to keep so much of our wealth tied to this one country that seems to be constantly on the verge of a meltdown? How China is laying the exit road, Russia is pushing people toward the door. Our own chaos is the engine that powers both moves. People in Washington often talk as if the dollar's position in the world is permanent, like gravity. But it is not a law of physics, it is a reputation. And reputations can be lost. Once that trust starts to slip, the consequences come back home very fast. Remember how our country works. We spend more than we collect. We fund the difference by selling debt to the rest of the world. They buy our treasury bonds because they see them as the safest parking spot for money that exists. If that belief weakens, they do not stop buying overnight, but they begin to trim, they hedge. They buy a little less. They put a bit more into other currencies, into gold, into commodities, into other systems. When demand for your debt drops, you have to offer a better deal to get people to buy it. The only better deal that really matters in this context is higher interest rates. Higher rates for the government mean higher rates for everyone, for mortgages, for car loans, for small business credit, for student loans, for every project that requires money up front. The chaos we treat like entertainment on television is not free. It is a hidden growing tax on every citizen. And that is only part one of the problem. Because all this is happening while we also driving up costs in other ways. Trade wars and tariffs make inputs more expensive. Steel, electronics, food, basic consumer goods. Inflation pressures rise. The currency becomes less trusted. A central bank faces a nightmare choice: cut rates to support growth and risk a weaker currency, or raise rates to defend the currency and risk a recession. This mix of rising prices, slowing growth, and higher unemployment has a name. It is called stagflation. It is like trying to drive a car that is both running out of fuel and on fire at the same time. In a normal downturn, you have some tools. You cut rates to stimulate the economy, or you raise them to cool things down. In a stagflation trap, every move hurts somewhere. And this is not some mysterious natural disaster. It is the logical outcome of making your own political system so unpredictable, so self destructive, that the rest of the world starts to doubt your money. Now imagine this playing out for a decade, not a year. Every year, a few more countries decide to price more of their trade in something other than dollars. Every year, a few more central banks quietly shift a little of their reserves away from dollars. Every year, a few more infrastructure projects go to Chinese backed deals that can be settled in their currency. At the same time, Russia and others keep feeding stories and fears about American instability, about defaults, about political violence, about gridlock. They do not have to be entirely true, they just have to be believable enough to make people nervous. At some point, that slow drip can turn into a rush. The fear of being the last one holding too many dollars becomes a bigger risk than the cost of moving some of them somewhere else. That is a currency spiral. If that spiral ever starts in a serious way, we are in real trouble. Because the only way to stop a run on your currency is to make it very attractive to hold your currency. That usually means doing one brutal thing: raising interest rates to painful levels, not a little nudge, not a quarter of a point. I am talking about 5, 10, even 20% in a true emergency. Rates so high that anyone betting against your currency risks losing a fortune. That might stabilize the dollar, it might stop a death spiral, but it would crush the real economy. Business would not just slow down, many would stop, mortgages would become unavoidable, the housing market would freeze, unemployment would spike. This is the trap I want people to see clearly. Let your currency be burned by inflation and destroy savings and wages, or slam the brakes so hard you break the engine and risk a second Great Depression. That is the kind of rock and hard place scenario that a slow, careless loss of trust can bring you to. And our rivals do not have to fire a single shot to get us there. They just have to keep taking advantage of the chaos we generate on our own. Now, how does this connect back to everyday life and to something as basic as who wins an infrastructure contract in Africa or Asia for generations? When an American company went abroad to bid on a major project, they did not just bring their product, they brought the American system with them. They could say, our financing comes from the deepest, most transparent capital markets in the world. Our contracts are backed by reliable courts. Our currency is rock solid. Our political system is noisy. Yes, but the rules do not change every time the wind shifts. That was an unbeatable package. Today, a Chinese competitor can walk into that same room and say, we will finance the entire project, build it for you, insure it, and give you long-term energy and supply guarantees with our partners. We can offer a fixed price, a long horizon, and we will not wake up in 5 years and sanction you because of some domestic argument. Then the American CEO walks in and has to answer questions like, will your government still honor this deal after the next election? Will we be on the wrong side of a sanction later? What happens if your Congress decides we are the enemy of the week on cable news? That American CEO is not just competing against a company anymore. They are competing against a rival system that is selling predictability and long term vision, while ours often looks like it is driven by the next rally, the next post, the next poll. We have taken the one thing that used to be our biggest advantage, our system, and we are turning it into our biggest risk. This is not only about numbers and graphs, it is about our friends as well as our rivals. Think about Europe, Japan, South Korea, and other long term allies. For decades, these relationships were like a perfectly balanced business partnership. We offered security and market access. They anchored the global system with us. They trusted us to be the reliable partner. Now imagine you are the leader of one of these countries. You watch the United States start trade fights with its own allies, threaten tariffs overnight, question the value of alliances that have kept the peace for generations, and openly attack some of the same institutions you rely on. You may still like America, you may still prefer us to the alternatives. But as a responsible leader, you cannot ignore the risk, so you start to do what any rigorous manager would do. You diversify suppliers. You do not announce it with a big speech. You quietly sign more trade deals with other partners. You build more regional financial tools. You explore non dollar payment channels. You test alternatives. You hedge. And once you have spent the money and the time to build those alternatives, you're not going to tear them down just because the White House looks calmer for a few years. That investment is permanent. The new system exists. Bit by bit, our share of their future shrinks, not because they hate us, but because we made ourselves too risky to rely on completely. That is the real decoupling. People talk loudly about decoupling from China, but the more dangerous decoupling that China and Russia are quietly pushing is the world decoupling from us. Enough smart enough to see that we created a vacuum with our allies, and in many emerging markets, they are stepping into that vacuum with money and patience. Russia is smart enough to see that our domestic chaos weakens our appetite for costly confrontations abroad. They test our limits and watch for hesitation. I want to be very clear about something. I do not believe China and Russia are 10 feet tall. I do not think their systems are better than ours. They have deep weaknesses of their own. What scares me is not that they are unbeatable. What scares me is that we are giving away our lead. We are handing them the playbook and the time to use it by burning down the one part of our system that made us different, our long term reliability. For 50 years. The easiest rule of thumb for an investor like me has been never bet against America. Not because we never make mistakes, but because we always find a way back to sanity, to compromise, to long term thinking. I am still not prepared to bet against the American people. But I am very worried about betting on a political culture that seems more interested in winning the next 24 hours than safeguarding the next 20 years, and that is where you come in. This is not meant to make you feel powerless. It is meant to make you see where the real power actually sits. Our adversaries are studying bond markets and reserve flows and 25-year plans. We are arguing over who owned the last news cycle. That gap in focus is the space they are exploiting. If you care about this country, if you care about your savings, your job, your children's future, then you cannot treat this as just another loud political era that will magically reset on its own. You have to reward leaders who respect institutions, who tell you hard truths about trade offs, who are willing to think past the next election. You have to punish with your vote and your voice those who treat the system itself like a toy, something to break for short term applause. Because here is the simple reality: China and Russia are not primarily beating us with tanks and missiles, they are beating us with patience and spreadsheets. They are using our own chaos as their greatest weapon. And the only real defense we have against that is not a new missile system or a new social media rant. It is a renewal of something much quieter and much more powerful: trust in our own rules, predictability in our own behavior, and seriousness about our place in the world. I am not asking you to agree with me on every policy point. I am asking you to see the big picture. You're holding the most valuable franchise on earth, a system that the world once trusted more than any other. We are in danger of throwing it away, not because someone stole it from us, but because we forgot what it was worth. So, if you understand even part of what I'm saying, do not just nod and move on. Talk about this with your friends, share it, question it, look up the facts yourself. Watch what other countries are doing, not just what our politicians are saying. And most important, use your power. Vote, support leaders who think in decades, not in days. Support policies that might be less entertaining but more stable. Because if we do not change course, the story history will tell is not China and Russia defeated America. The story will be America defeated itself and its rivals simply walked into the space it left behind. I do not want that story. You do not want that story. If you agree, then do one simple thing when this ends. Do not treat it like just another video. Treat it like a wake up call. Share it. Talk about it. And the next time you have a chance to choose leaders from the local level to the national level, choose the ones who understand that our greatest asset is not one person, not one party, but the system itself. Because if we protect that, we can outthink and out innovate anyone. If we keep burning it, we are handing our future away.